The title of our little series is what? Overcoming, being conqueror of the crave. Yes, it's the crave, but learning that we can be overcomers of the crave. And we were asking different questions about the crave. What's the first question we asked? Why? Why would we need a strong why? Pardon me? Motivator, ownership. We need a strong why. And we looked at different categories of why. Do you remember some of those categories? Healthy body, happiness, mind, and stronger spirit. Thank you. Yes, we looked at those four, really all provide a very strong why, don't you think? Then we looked at the what. What is the crave? Anyone want to briefly encapsulate what they think we're talking about so far? We're going to define it more today. Is the crave a verb? I crave, I lust, I desire, yes, but it's also what? A noun. And we're going to look in the Word of God as to what I think is synonymous with this concept of the crave. And then we talked about a little bit about where we can overcome this and how we can apply that at work, at home, as we travel, as we're with people, that it's adaptable to our situations, that it's not this cast wrought iron bed, right? But that it is something that God will help us navigate through. And people were sharing with me how they're known at work for being healthy eaters, right? They may not do it exactly like they would at home, but even they're carrying it with them where they go. And then when would we want to be overcoming the crave? Some people wait till they experience that clenching pain in their chest and they're like, I've got to do something. I've got to make changes now. Other people feel the conviction of the Holy Spirit. Other people may do it from selfish motives. And yet, irrespective, God can bless that and bring the blessings about in our lives from whenever we choose to do it. But now is the day that I think would be a great time to start. And then what I think is one of the most important questions for us to address is how. And we looked at this very briefly, introduced it yesterday, how to overcome. Because as I kind of suggested, we go to school and it's like, you've got to learn this, you've got to memorize this. And some people are smarter than others or have better skills or more focus and they can naturally navigate. And then others of us, how do we learn? How can I learn how to memorize this? And we're not necessarily taught how to learn. And yet that's kind of resurging in our society where there are people who are being hired to teach people, how can I utilize this organ of my body in a more succinct, efficient manner to be able to learn and remember and that sort of thing. So and then we go to church and we're told that we need to overcome, but do we simultaneously encourage one another with how to overcome? So I'm hoping that today will be a part of that process. This is a study that I've just been going through myself, so it's not perfect, and I hope that there will be time for us to chew on this together and discuss it after the last. But we talked yesterday about how our natural inclination is to point the finger at each other and to say change, and I've definitely had people do that to me in my life, and I will give you the 411. As much as you feel bad about the areas of your life that you need to change, it's not very empowering just to be told that you need to change. And we discussed Robin Williams' statement as well, and why we would be coming to people and to make sure that we come with genuine pathos, that we're looking for them to experience the healthy body, the happiness, the sharper mind, and the deeper spiritual connection that we're experiencing through this lifestyle. And Spalding said this, that we are to be teachers of the art of living, that people need to learn how to live. And yet, what are we teaching them? And that is such a good question. What are we teaching? And as I shared with you yesterday, I have a strong love for in my life of health education, and I think it has a place. Not the entirety, but it has a place. The Bible says, come, let us reason together, let us learn to do good. And this is in the context of the acknowledgement that our sins, though they be as scarlet, becoming white as snow. So the process of overcoming is one in which we need to learn. There's an educational journey that we go through. And yet, when we look at what healthcare offers to us, and we touched on healthcare versus sick care yesterday, but when you think of what are the solutions or the antidotes or the therapies when we say cancer, what is healthcare going to provide for you? Radiation and chemo. All right. How about cholesterol, elevated cholesterol? Pardon me? Pills, medication, statins. All right. Type 2 diabetes. Metformin, that was the answer I was looking for. Metformin, it's the first go-to, right? That is on the protocol list, that's the first medication we always give to someone who's newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. What about the common cold?
Chicken noodle soup.
Chicken noodle soup, that's great. I hadn't thought about that one, but that's true. How about dandruff? Head and shoulders, good. You did great on this quiz. Okay, so here is this amazing statement that we have that we would do well to really understand fully. The only hope of better things is in the education, all right? So we need the education of the people in right principles. Let physicians teach the people that the restorative power is where? Not in drugs, but in nature. Where is healing found? This medication will alleviate your symptom. You need this medication maybe for your pain symptom or, to address something that is urgent and necessary to address right now. But is it going to restore you? Is it going to heal you? You're going to be on that medication probably for the rest of your life if you only look to that medication, right? No, the restorative power is somewhere else. And that's what people need to understand. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained, unhealthful conditions should be changed, wrong habits corrected, then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the system. So we're going to just highlight real quick the not in drugs, but in nature. What is the number one leading cause of death in America? Heart attacks, cardiovascular disease, yes. And what did we say our choice of treatment is initially for cardiovascular disease? A statin medication. Okay, so this is interesting. Just some brief information just to share with you guys. Statins increase life expectancy over a 5-year period by how long? 4 days. I didn't make that up. This is information from the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence in England. 140 people would have to take a statin for one of them to benefit. So 139 people are taking a medication that comes with a package of side effects, and one person is truly going to benefit from that. And that's, I think, because of remember we talked about health reform pursuing how we pursue health reform as well, including that. And what if we go to the doctor and this is the standard protocol, then it comes irrespective of whether you specifically would be the one in 140 that would benefit from this. There has to be more clear differentiation of who would actually benefit from this. So there's some research where they try to analyze and say, this is the more specific population of people who have cardiovascular disease risk that would benefit from a statin medication. But even then, achieving these cholesterol target levels in this research that was done did not confer any additional benefit in a review of 35 randomized controlled trials. Now, did that statin medication lower your cholesterol level? No, it does. That's why it's used. It's very successful at lowering cholesterol levels. It impedes your body's ability to produce cholesterol. So, my numbers are normal. They're in a good range. I'm healthy and I'm good to go. That's kind of how we look at the approach, right? But in this review, it's saying, it really, even achieving those healthy cholesterol levels did not achieve what we thought it was achieving. Okay, I think that's important for us to understand. Most major heart attacks occur in people with normal cholesterol levels. This is what research finds. So, where is the restorative power? In medications or in nature? Okay. So then we also saw from this statement that that nature needs to be assisted. This is where our part can come in, that it can be assisted in her effort to do what? Expel impurities. I shared with you yesterday how my father scoffed at me when I told him about how food can affect the mind, right? He was an old-time physician who wasn't aware of that or hadn't been educated in that. And when I shared with him about toxins, he laughed at me again. Now, I was young and I didn't know, I didn't have a lot of oomph to, now I would probably share it with him differently. But here we're told, no, there are things that need to be expelled. There are impurities, and this is basically talking about the process of detoxification. Now, when you think of the word detox, what comes to your mind? Okay, some people, you said drugs, those are things that we would want to detox from, right? Sometimes when people think of the process of detox, they think of a master cleanse or a fast or something like that. And those may have a place. However, God designed your body to do daily detox. Daily we are exposed. And daily, God provided means by which, right, redemption is written in every cell, by which these could be expelled. However, sadly, unfortunately, they are overwhelmed because what are we detoxing from? Our exposure is tremendous. So 85,000 chemicals are registered recently, and yet of those 85,000 chemicals, only 10% were tested. And when they test them, they're testing them individually to see, like, for cancer risk and that kind of thing, but they're not testing them to see, oh, what does this chemical mixed with this chemical in that proportion and this chemical in that proportion? And you and I are exposed when we are driving down the road and, there's some diesel truck in front of us, right? We smell that. When we're pumping our gas, when we're putting things on our body, when we are cleaning our house, when we are driving in that the car that we rented, it's new and it has a really strong, right? Those are all off-gassing things that they're not just benign, we're taking them into our body. So more than 25% of the population is said to have heavy metal residing in their body. BPA, which is a plastic derivative, is detected in the urine of over 90% of Americans. Try to buy food that hasn't been exposed to plastic, right? That's tough. So one of the ways in which it's entering into our bodies. In the umbilical cord blood, this is horrible. Over 200 industrial chemicals and pollutants are found. So even before the baby enters into this toxic world, it's been exposed as well. He or she has been exposed to numerous chemicals. And nowadays we hear so many people where the thyroid is going bad, right? Seems like it's just skyrocketing in terms of how many people are affected with either hypothyroid, hyperthyroid. The thyroid is kind of like a sponge for environmental toxins, and it's communicating to us, hey, I'm not doing well. There's imbalance, and I'm not able to cope with this level of toxic exposure. And so nature needs to be assisted. Just really quickly, we see these huge categories of where we're potentially, absorbing, or these substances may be entering into where are they coming from? So indoor air, the counsel that we have of opening our windows is more important today than even then. Solvents, pesticides, drugs, medical devices, cleaning agents, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just important for us, I think, to have awareness. And it can be overwhelming. I know when I started learning about this, I just felt like, this is so overwhelming. It's getting stressful. But if you start navigating like little bits of your life one at a time, it's doable. Maybe start with your cleaning products and start saying, well, what else could I use? How about some baking soda and vinegar? Or nowadays markets are there's so much more availability of non-toxic cleaner products, etc. On average, a woman uses 12 beauty products a day, and so before she even leaves her bathroom or her bedroom, she's potentially been exposed to 100 chemicals just from, trying to look our best and that sort of thing. So that's another area where we as women can say, what would be some better options for me to use for cleaning myself or beauty products and that sort of thing. Okay, next part of this statement, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed and wrong habits corrected. How do we ascertain the cause? Sometimes you might go to your doctor and your doctor will explain to you where what's the cause? What's some of the physiology, right? They know that stuff. They understand. They went to school a long time to understand the physiology behind these disease processes. Ask them to teach you. Right? Help me to understand what's causing the symptoms that I'm experiencing. And when we look at cardiovascular disease, many people want to find one thing that would be the bad guy. And if, again, we get rid of it, then I feel security and hope. But usually it's not that simple. There's a constellation of effects. But I will tell you that if we looked and dug a little deeper, we would see inflammation as a big underlying causative factor to cardiovascular disease. What can I do about inflammation? And the other one that I think is really important for us to address is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, I think, could possibly be the number one risk factor for poor metabolic health, which translates, unfortunately, into poor cardiovascular health as well. 66% of individuals admitted with heart attack have full criteria for something called metabolic syndrome. Now, we always hear about type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. Are you familiar with metabolic syndrome? Have you heard that term before? So it's a word that we use to say, this person has at least 3 risk factors out of 5 that are causing imbalance and poor metabolic function in their body. Now, I always used to wonder, what in the world is metabolism? We always used to, I always heard about it in relation to revving up your metabolism if you wanted to lose weight. But when we're talking about metabolism, we're basically talking about what keeps us alive, and that is the production of energy and how certain hormones are involved in that and how certain little organelles inside of cells are responsible for that production of energy, and it keeps us going and alive, and it occurs in almost every single cell of your body. And so this is what we're talking about. There's a lot of physiology underlying what is our metabolism, and a metabolic syndrome is just saying this isn't working as well as it should. We're not producing energy the way we should. We're having some hormone imbalance and so forth, and it's manifesting in these ways in our body. And if you have 3 of them, then you're said to have this metabolic syndrome. So these are the 5 areas that are looked at. Is there visceral obesity? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't pinch an inch. That's subcutaneous fat. But when we say visceral obesity, we're talking about fat that is internal underneath the muscle layer, that's packed itself around your internal body organs, and that is the most active. I used to think fat was just a brainless blob of leftovers that was just waiting for a time of famine to be consumed, but it's not. Fat becomes little chemical factories that actually produce and secrete all these compounds that can really drive things like inflammation, and they can change the way our body works and become in and of themselves an endocrine organ, an organ that's contributing to how your body's supposed to be functioning. So that's an important one. The weight around our abdomen is more key than the weight that we store somewhere else. Insulin resistance, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Low HDL cholesterol, or just imbalanced cholesterol levels. That is important for us to identify, again, imbalance. Hypertension and high triglycerides. Okay, so here we see on the other picture, just a thin person may have 3. They may not be overweight, but they might have 3 of the others and still have metabolic syndrome. So weight is not always the determining factor, and that's important for us to be aware of. If you addressed insulin resistance in adults over 30 years old, you would prevent 42% of heart attacks. Is anyone else wowed by that? Oh, do statins have that kind of a track record? No. But here, what if we started focusing our efforts at improving our insulin sensitivity? Hypertension is very much associated with insulin resistance. Elevated insulin levels cause our blood vessels to constrict and affect us in other ways as well. So when we talk about insulin resistance, it's another one of those terms. It's like, well, what does that really mean? What are we talking about? Insulin is the Oregonian gas attendant in your body. So if you go to Oregon across the border, do you have to get out and pump your own gas? No. Someone comes up, opens the gas tank, and sticks the fuel into your gas tank. Insulin is that compound in your body that comes to your cells, opens it up, and sticks the fuel in. Okay, is that easy to understand? All right, so that's insulin. So here, if we look at a cell, this is someone's attempt to try to put it in picture form. Insulin is that purple triangle, comes to the cell, docks onto a receptor, opens the gates, and the blood sugar, which is the gasoline of your body, can enter into that cell, leaves the blood stream, and then once it enters into the cell, it's combusted and it produces energy. Okay, are you tracking with me so far? So blood sugar is your gas, and insulin is the guy who comes and puts the gas into your cell where it can be combusted and produced into energy. So here's that top. We see it doing well, little insulin docking onto the receptor, gates open, glucose enters in. But if we look underneath that, we see this red X on the insulin receptor, and we see that, now the receptor and insulin aren't communicating with each other very well. Now there's no communication, and because of that, the gates stay closed. Can't open the gas tank. So, can't open the gas tank. And because it can't open the gas tank, state remains closed, fuel can't go in, stays in the bloodstream, elevated blood sugar eventually, right? Where does insulin come from? It comes from this amazing organ called our pancreas. Our pancreas has different cells in it, but one of the cells that is in the pancreas is this beta cell. And this beta cell is phenomenal because it senses just what the blood sugar is doing. Oh, you're about to eat Deborah's amazing cheesecake and blueberries on top, and oh, it's starting to rise, the blood sugar's starting to rise, and it senses that, and it releases the insulin in just the perfect right amount, just to open up just enough gates for that blood sugar that came in to enter into those cells gradually, beautifully, so we don't have this huge spike in blood sugar. And thank you. It produces the insulin in that cell, and it stores the insulin in that cell, and again releases it gradually. And it's just so complicated, and yet it's so beautiful, and everything that goes on in there. So if you look at this slide, I just want you to understand a few really important components of this. And I know it looks a little messy, but on the left, we see this healthy beta cell. This is the cell that's producing insulin. Those things that look like eyes, or we could just say, the amount of insulin that it's producing and that it's storing. So here's this healthy beta cell. We have normal glucose tolerance, meaning my blood sugar is doing great. But what can happen is those cells can become stressed out. What do you think stresses out beta cells? And you guess sugar, fat. Good answers, you guys. Yes. And you can see that word in the green where it says glucolipotoxicity. So as we're getting more and more stressed and we're seeing this failing beta cell, this glucolipotoxicity is going on. Gluco meaning sugar, lipo meaning fat, become toxic to these cells. So these cells are, let's say that this is happening, and we've got some simultaneous insulin resistance. The resistance, remember, is when the cell can't be opened. So because of that, the blood sugars are staying a little elevated. So the beta cell senses that. Blood sugars are high, secreting insulin. There it goes. They're still high. Better secrete some more insulin. They're still high. More insulin, and more insulin is being produced. And that's a really big job for these beta cells. And if you've ever seen that funny clip from Lucille Ball where she's folding chocolates and they're going down an assembly line. Nope, wrong crowd. Okay. So I share this with my patients because they can relate to it. So they're trying, they've got this work that they got to do, and they got to fold these chocolates. So pretty soon all these chocolates start coming, and can they keep up with it? No. So same thing with the beta cell. It can't keep, it's hard to keep up. It stresses it out. It's like, man, I just more and more and more and more. And because more insulin resistance, because I'm guzzle-lugging sweet drinks, it doesn't matter whether necessarily in this state, whether it's a Coke or an orange juice or a frappe, whatever, it's still, it's this huge rush of blood sugar, and the pancreas is just like, I can't do this anymore. Eventually they can fail, and again, then they can implode, they can kind of start dying off, commit suicide, and we've got this raging disease that is so prevalent in our society, type 2 diabetes, right? So prevalent. So kind of discuss. I showed you guys this slide yesterday, but hopefully it means a little bit more to you today after just trying to identify what insulin is, what is insulin resistance really simplistically. So remember we saw that the blue line is insulin resistance, and that's those cells becoming more and more closed off, non-communicative with insulin. Right? So that's what the insulin resistance is. And here we see it growing and increasing and increasing. And remember, why did we say, well, I didn't think we gave you the answer yet. So during this time, while insulin resistance is increasing, your fasting blood sugar for years potentially is normal. So you go to the doctor, checks your fasting blood sugar, normal, you're good to go. Why? Why all those years? Well, I'm developing insulin resistance. Is my fasting blood sugar normal? Remember, disease is an effort of nature to resist something, conditions that have resulted from violation to itself. And so this whole time my blood sugar is normal because your body has been fighting for you. Those beta cells have been working so hard for you. And that red line, we can see that. Oh, it was providing a lot of insulin, surges of insulin, lots of insulin to keep those blood sugars down. Now, your body was cueing you in, though, to the imbalance through those years because it was saying, high cholesterol. I'm gaining weight. And yet we treat the cholesterol with a statin, forgetting to look a little bit deeper. Why is my cholesterol high? Oh, it could be because I'm developing insulin resistance. And this is what I need to start targeting with my lifestyle interventions and correcting with changes that I'm willing to make for myself. Is that understandable? Okay, so insulin resistance, diabetes can cause a cascade of events that leads to a lot of different conditions. And the one thing that I think is important for us and so exciting for us, we have something amazing to offer the world. Lifestyle is more powerful than any drug, right? It's powerful stuff because it's restorative. It's restorative. It's not just dealing with the symptom. It takes a little bit longer, but it is definitely restorative. And education, I would like to share with you guys. We need to learn how to educate, but education is not always enough. People were educated and told that bacon would raise their risk of Alzheimer's 44%. They were then asked if they would stop eating bacon, and guess what they said? No way. I love bacon. There's no way I'm going to give up my bacon. Out of the survey, what percentage said they would not eat bacon anymore? Yeah, it was like 37%. So the vast majority said, no, I'm keeping the bacon. Alzheimer's? That's in the future, right? Maybe when they start forgetting something or they start feeling it, maybe they would, but no. And obviously there's a lot more involved, but my point is basically just sharing with you that that education sometimes is not enough because we're dealing with what? The crave. We're dealing with the crave. And the crave is something much deeper. The crave is something that I have to recognize within myself in order for me to be able to help other people who are experiencing the crave as well. Because if you go to someone and you share with them information and they're just like, there's no way I could give up my bacon. Rather than saying, oh, you're stupid, that's the stupidest decision, why in the world? I understand where you're coming from. I've been there. I've had to fight my own crave. Let me share with you some tools that have been so helpful for me to overcome this crave. Because remember when we looked at the mind, we looked at the brain, just kind of understanding that the brain as a whole is composed of all these different parts, and pleasure and appetite, they're God-given. They were instilled within that brain, but they were designed to fill a certain role, right? To be subservient, to be under the control of. Do you remember what appetite and the crave are to be under the control of? We looked at it yesterday. Conscience, reason. Good. She took some good notes. Good. Yeah. So the appetite is to be under the control of these other parts of the brain that are kind of nurturing it. And yeah, I know you want that, but this is what we're going to do. This is the better course. You're going to experience happiness and fulfillment and satiation in this pathway. Because remember, we're not trying to pull the wool out from underneath people's eyes. All heaven heaven knows that our greatest impulse is to seek our own happiness. All heaven is occupied in helping us to find that path for ourselves and showing us that the enemy has put up a huge lie, all these delusions, right? We looked at how different substances and foods, Doritos, or all these different really super stimulating foods, they may ignite that pleasure reward pathway. Cocaine, tobacco, alcohol, they may ignite that pleasure reward pathway. But while you're experiencing pleasure, what's going on is that many of those pleasure receptors are being shut down. Your ability to experience pleasure is actually being diminished. What a lie, what a con artist, right? These foods and these substances are. So if I really want you to experience fulfillment and optimal living, fullness of life, then let me share with you, what I've found to be the secret. Many try to correct the lives of others by attacking what they regard as wrong habits. Such a course often fails of securing the desired results. Teach by example. Have you experienced it genuinely for yourself? Let your self-denial and your victory over appetite be an illustration of obedience to right principles. And it's not a I have to, or I can't, or I should, right? Don't should on yourself and don't should on others either. It's so important that we realize, no, this is amazing way of life. It's of little use to try to reform others by attacking what we may regard as wrong habits. Such effort often results in more harm than good. So this is the beginning. In our next one, we will discuss how to overcome by faith. And that's where the power is.